Shalom, shalom. Call halal Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rikar Kodash. Once again, double honor to the apostles of Great Millstone who told me this truth and who rule well. This is Naaman. All right, and today we're going to talk about actually propaganda, all right, as it relates to, as the title says here, fake U.S. history, how American exceptionalism hides shame, creates stupidity, and dangerous imperialism. And all you have to do is look at the American people or sheeple, all right? Going back to the so-called America's greatest generation from World War II, all right, the baby boomers, all that, all right? Here's the premise. It says the culture. Right there you have the back shot of Baghdad, all right? And it says premise, the culture and nation state of the United States of America is founded on the egregious and forceful dispossession of others. True. Can't argue with that. Very true. You might even call it an earlier version of fascism. Institutional dehumanization for private profit. No one should know about that other than the Israelites, those from the southern kingdom that were brought here and those who were already here. Gad, the so-called American Indians, all right, both of Gad and Reuben, all right. It says a myth or grand lie was created that we are an exceptional people. So he's telling you off the bat that was a lie. Effectively preempting openly experiencing the important feeling of social shame and in turn blocking any accountability or genuine inquiry into our genocidal origins built on stolen land and labor that murdered millions with impunity. Let's look up both those words. All right. Impunity. Let's see. Impunity. And this is exactly what he did when coming over here. Impunity. Exemption from punishment, so-called American exceptionalism. Exemption from punishment, penalty, or harm. Exemption from punishment or penalty. Freedom or exemption from injury, suffering, or discomfort. Wow. Who does that sound like? Let's go to the scriptures. Salakia. Again, I apologize for my voice. This is going to be Isaiah 47. That wind is really rough. All right. Actually, let's just start at the top. This is Isaiah chapter 47, verse 1. It says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Confusion. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. The U.S. of A. Take the millstones and grind mill, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, all the dirt, all the murder, all the robbery, all the rape, all of it. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. This is the Lord talking about when he comes back. All right. As for our Redeemer, the Most High Yahweh, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people, he's talking about Israel. I have polluted mine inheritance and given them into thine hand. You had us in chattel slavery. You exploited us for everything that you could, in every way that you could, and still doing it. He says, thou didst shew them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. So that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart. They didn't read the fine print. neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am and none else beside me, I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. Verse 9, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment and one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. America. It's something else that they didn't consider. Like I said, they didn't read the fine print. This is Numbers chapter 35, verse 33, and it says, So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. What did he do when he come over here? He raped, robbed, and murdered the tribes of Gad and Reuben, the so-called North American Indians. And then later on, he brought the southern kingdom, all right, the so-called Negroes, all right, the darker nations of Israel. He says, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So you don't get away, you don't get to sing happy trails and fade on the way into the sunset. No, it don't work like that. All right, so let's go back to the article. This is a guy that's in his twilight years, all right, and it's gotten to him. It says, thus we live by fantasy of our superiority, which functionally makes us stupid, as if in a stupor. And you can just look at the people, you know, and besides the pride, it's like because of what I'm getting into, the propaganda that's been pushed for generations, these people, they are gone. It says, applying the legal exclusionary rule to the culture at large, the USA is the fruit of the poisonous tree. That's a legal term. All right. As with most civilizations founded on forcibly stolen land and labor, thereby lacking any moral or legal validity. Let's get that fruit of the poisonous tree. You see it in, let's see, fruit of, let's see, there we go, tree doctrine. Yes, legal law, legal definition. Let's see. Fruit of the poisonous tree. It says the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine is an offspring of the exclusionary rule. The exclusionary rule mandates that evidence obtained from an illegal arrest, unreasonable search, or coercive interrogation must be excluded from trial. Under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, evidence is also excluded from trial if it was gained through evidence uncovered in an illegal arrest. All right, unreasonable search or coercive interrogation. Like the exclusionary rule, the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine was established primarily to deter law enforcement from violating rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. The name fruit of the poisonous tree is thus a metaphor. The poisonous tree is evidence seized in an illegal arrest, search, or interrogation by law enforcement. So by saying this, or using this as an example, he's saying that everything they've done in the past, they can't. That's why this reparations bullshit that's being brought up, it's never going to happen. All right? Because they're saying that because of this doctrine, that they're exempt from all past crimes. All right? Keep telling you this man is a hypocrite. All right? Now you go into his law books and he's got accessories to crimes and all sorts of things that he can get you with. All right. Let's see where I leave off. The poisonous tree and the fruit are both excluded from criminal trial. Assume that a police officer, well, I'm not going to get into all that. You can read that for yourself. See if there's any more on this. No, that's basically it, because they get into all the Supreme Court cases and all that. Let's see. What did I just do? Hold on. Never mind. Let's go back to the article. All right. So again, he's absolved himself of all guilt and blame, and therefore he's saying he can't be held accountable. All right. Introduction. It says, when I was a child in rural upstate New York in the 40s and 50s, I enjoyed small town life and the tranquility of a luscious surrounding nature. I had pictures of baseball stars plastered on all four of my bedroom walls. I recited a grateful prayer in my little sanctuary before going to sleep each night. Thank you, God, for allowing me to have been born and raised in the United States, the greatest country in the history of the world, endowed by our Creator to bring prosperity to the impoverished and Christianity to the heathen. It was a wonderful story, greatly enhanced by our nation's celebrated reputed victory over fascism in Europe. Life was good, or so I thought. Having been born on July the 4th, 1941, damn, I was a patriotic baby of the World War II generation. My family was lower middle class, devout Baptist, and like my parents, I believed that the FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, protected our democratic Christian freedoms from the Russians. The Cold War propaganda was nothing short of spectacular, virtually all unchallenged by anyone I knew. But there was another factor operating, coinciding with the celebrated post-World War II victory. The nation experienced a unique 35-year blip in its history, in the age of a large middle class imbibing an insatiable consumerism and optimism. My family replaced their icebox with a new electric refrigerator after the war, bought their first automobile, and by 1958 had purchased an 11-inch B&W television, black and white television set. It was proof that we are an exceptional people and God's chosen people to boot. You see how proud these devils are? However, this optimism was tempered by fear of a Soviet Union that severely prevented genuine liberal dialogue and critical thinking education. So they're saying they were limited. But this is how the Most High checked them, all right? Kept them in check, because who knows if they didn't have anybody to challenge them, how much more of an ass these people would have been. All right, so it's 1950s, positive thinking, prosperity gospel, Norman Vincent Peale and U.S. exceptionalism. And this is one of their so-called spiritual advisors, Esau, all right? It says Norman Vincent Peale, 1898 to 1993, a Dutch reform minister, wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, 1952, a bestseller for 186 consecutive weeks. I'm going to skip on down here, where he goes into, but actually, let me get this, because I got to get this real quick, because this is the magic word here, propaganda, all right? Propaganda is information that is used primarily to influence an audience and further an agenda. Remember, he was born July the 4th, 1941, came of age during World War II, all right, at the very beginnings of it for the U.S., that is, all right, and he was fed this bullshit throughout his life, and he actually believed it. Once again, propaganda is information that is used primarily to influence an audience and further an agenda, which may not be objective and may be presenting facts selectively to encourage a particular synthesis or perception, or using loaded language to produce an emotional rather than a rational response to the information that is presented. And that's exactly what happened in the schools, especially when I was growing up, all right? This image of the USA that could not do anything wrong, all right, that was pushed. And he goes into, it says, Donald Trump, as a 6-year-old child, began to regularly attend Peale's New York City's church with his parents. Peale officiated at Trump's first marriage with Ivana Zelnikova, and both Trump's sisters were married at Peale's church. To this day, Trump lauds Peale for his success, unrestrained self-confidence, and from whom he learned modern branding. In Trump's 2015 book, Crippled America, How to Make America Great Again, he proclaimed that I am a Christian, I love God, and I love having a relationship with him. And the Bible is the most important book ever written. Going back to what they did under Reagan when they declared the 1611 Bible, all right, the book of the land, all right. But do they follow it? No. Again, every time you go to court and you testify, you got to swearing on the Bible. So why are they doing that if they're not holding you to the Bible standards? You see how you can get into this and they can, wow. Oh, let's see. Skipping down to Vietnam, Great Awakening of the Grand Lie. I was in Vietnam in '69 where I turned 28 years, having been drafted in 1966 during my fourth semester of law school. So here's a guy that was in college, and yet, well, let me keep on going. It was there that my Disney bliss rapidly evaporated. The entrance sign to my squadron's in-country headquarters said, "Welcome to Indian country." This reminded me of the slogan, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian," hinting the same plight for the Vietnamese. Incidentally, Trump, 5 years my junior, enjoyed 5 deferments, enabling him to avoid Vietnam. While performing auxiliary duty as a U.S. Air Force combat security officer, I documented the immediate aftermath of atrocities committed from the air that annihilated inhabited, undefended villages. I was sickened from the sight of hundreds of villagers lying dead and suffering horribly in their villages. I wondered, who the fuck am I? A 6'3" white man, 9,000 miles from my rural farming village in New York State. These Vietnamese were in their home villages. Village life was the essence of Vietnamese culture, and we were systematically destroying it. I felt depressingly unauthentic, like a dumb, ideological robot, and began to realize that being a privileged white man was in fact an emotional and intellectual disability. White male supremacy was a powerful force, as it enabled a kind of mindless sliding through life, preempting the need to ask serious questions. However, my discovery of empathy began to radicalize me. I wondered whether we had become sadistic criminal sociopaths, or have we always been? The latter is true. Accumulating high body counts from babies to grandparents and every age in between was politically comforting to U.S. politicians and to a large number of their tax-paying constituents. We simply created a fiction that we were killing the enemy to satisfy the emotional and political momentum of stopping the boogeyman, communism, when in fact we were murdering innocent Vietnamese peasants. Mass murder was normalized. When the U.S. war ended in '75, 13,000 of 21,000 Vietnamese villages had been deliberately wiped out. Huge B-52 bombers left 26 million bomb craters, while targeting and destroying almost 950 churches and pagodas. 350 clearly marked hospitals, nearly 3,000 educational institutions, over 15,000 bridges, 18 power plants, 40 factories, 10 million cubic meters of dikes, and 25 million acres of farmland. The U.S. also chemically poisoned food supplies and forests. Our cultural corruption is so extreme, we proudly ordered B-52 death machines flying 5 miles high, dressed by God-fearing chaplains to bomb unarmed, mostly Buddhist peasants living 9,000 miles across the Pacific. What? Several million peasants were gruesomely, senselessly murdered, with countless additional millions permanently maimed. It was barbaric. It was genocidal. I felt personal shame for my participation and intense anger of betrayal. At times I felt suicidal. My white male conditioning had made me disabled, i.e. a kind of stupidity whose mind hadn't even thought to seriously ask why. Why I was putting my life on the line in a small country across the seas I knew nothing about. Okay, how much more the Jakes, the Israelites, the so-called African Americans here, and others of Israel, after being continually disrespected and humiliated, spat on. And this isn't even after coming back from Vietnam. This is before going to Vietnam. All right? You got to remember, at this point, he's talking about early 70s. All right? He goes on to say, I had been part of a massive conspiracy to violate international law and destroy a sovereign people. But I had been conditioned to think that America was nonetheless exceptional. Criminal cruelty to prevent Vietnamese autonomy. All right? And I'm going to let you, for time's sake, because this is very lengthy, I'm going to just post a link to this. But like I say, propaganda, what people have been programmed to do off of the lies this country is put out there, all right? Because of its American exceptionalism, we can't be held accountable for our crimes, all right? This is, let's see, because at the end of the day, this is what we're out here doing, and they can't stand it because we're taking off the veil, lifting up the skirt, however you want to put it. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4. It says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Most High to the pulling down of strongholds." American exceptionalism is a stronghold. All right, that this country is representative of God's chosen people, not to mention the great pretenders over there in the land of Israel. All right, which, by the way, this country is run by them anyway. This is just like a satellite, not the other way around. America is a satellite of those Amalekites over there in the land of Israel and these other banking elites. All right, don't get it twisted. Once again, 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4. "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Most High to the pulling down of strongholds." Verse 5. "Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God." Does not this country do that? Do they not exalt themselves against or even above the Most High? Look at this LGBTIQ shit going on. You know that's wrong. You're supposed to uphold the Bible. All right? Don't you know that's against homosexuality in all its forms? Bestiality in all manners of sexual perversion. All right? Again, you're talking about Amalek here. You're talking about Edomites as a whole. All right, these are people that the Most High hates. So there is no repenting for these people. But he's going to make sure as many as he can, he's going to take with him. All right? Once again, 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, "Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of the Most High, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Hamashiach Yahushua." All right? Wow. And he goes on to say, fake history about Vietnam was confirmed in the 1971 release of the Pentagon Papers. All right. Dishonest intelligence. We know all about that from 9/11 and these others since then. All right. And this guy is 78 now. All right. 50 years out of Vietnam. Skipping down the midway here, he says, well, I just started top. He says, now 78, 50 years out of Vietnam, I'm aghast that we are living through an even more virulent Cold War. Cold War propaganda casts an overwhelming toxic spell on the minds of three generations, including many intelligent people. Relentless rhetoric accomplished a near total indoctrination of our entire U.S. culture. Virtually all systems colluded and cooperated to preserve unquestioning belief in the unique nobility of the U.S. American system while instilling rabid, paranoid fear of quote unquote enemies in our midst as well as out there. We rationalize pathologically inexplicable behavior around the world as well as at home. Indoctrination is so pervasive it generates a universally compelling mythology that conceals its own contradictions. Mm. He goes into Orwell, and that's exactly what's going on. All right, 1984. McCarthyism. He goes into all that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it right here, and I'll just post a link. And just remember, Micah 2 and 10, that's why we always stress that. Let me get that real quick. You got to keep the focus and get your mind out of here. This is Micah chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction." Let's see. Let's go to Proverbs. 4. Let's see. This is Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." All right, let's see. 25, "Let thine eyes look right on." What I say about focus. "And let thine eyelids look straight before thee." So like, all right. "Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil." All right. Again, focus. Let's go to Philippians 4 and 6. It says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication and thanksgiving, let your request be made known unto the Most High." All right. It says, and the peace of the Most High, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Hamashiach Yahushua. "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things." All right. Let's go back in the Old Testament to Psalms. Let's see. This is Psalms chapter 101, verse 3. It says, "I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me." All right. And that's basically it right there. Again, focus. Focus on this truth. All right. Because this world has nothing to offer. And our people have been screwed over in so many ways. Psychologically, you just look at Jake and you're like, please come quickly. You pray to the Most High Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. All right. As it says, let me get that. As it says in Matthew 24 and 22, it says, "And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." All right. But for the elect's sake. All right. So with that, once again, go back to the article. It says, "Fake U.S. history, how American exceptionalism hides shame, creates stupidity, and dangerous imperialism." All right. So with that, I'll call halal Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushua, Ba'Hashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Salutations to the Akim out there on the highways and byways, pushing this truth, all honesty and sincerity. I'm trying to wake up the hopefully elect. All right, so with that, Shalom, Akim.